All right, let's get into the Phillies mailbag with Frank Klose, and a lot of questions at the All-Star break. Of course, a lot of people thinking big picture here, Frank, as the Phillies, at the All-Star break. 8 Phillies at the All-Star game. That's a record, although Suarez and Wheeler will not perform in the game tonight. But there will be those 3 starters in there. We'll see if Sanchez and Strahm and Hoffman ended up in the game as well. But, man, what'd you think of the Derby last night? Very long.
Yes, it's a little long. I honestly can't keep track of all the rule changes over the years, so it's I did like that they all got to hit what they hit the first round and then went into the brackets. I did think that was a little bit better, but yeah, it was indeed a little long, and I'll be very honest, after Bohm was eliminated, I did not stick around for the rest.
Yeah, you and me both. I agree. I like that, take the most and then put them into brackets. But, I mean, the 3 minutes or the 40 pitches, it's too much. It's ridiculous. The timeouts. Shorter's better. 1 minute. Who can hit the most home runs in a minute and a half? How about that? A minute and a half, you get to hit home runs. No timeouts. Bang, just go through. See how many home runs you hit. You move to the next round. Mano a mano. Bang. You could shorten that thing by an hour and a half probably. I mean, for Alec Bohm not to hit for an hour and 45 minutes was ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree with that. That was quite the long layover, and I definitely think he was at a disadvantage at that point. I know they let him bat first because I guess he was kind of projected to be the least likely to win, but he really had to wait that out. And so you got to wonder if his timing was affected. Didn't seem to, hitting 14 in that second round.
No, I mean, I liked his opportunity to win it mainly because it reminds me a lot like Bobby Abreu was not a home run hitter. He was a doubles hitter. He was a very pure hitter. But when he had that swing and it was going, he crushed a bunch of them in Comerica Park. So I thought if Bohm could get hot with his swing, that he could just launch a bunch. And we saw him hit 21 in the first round and kind of move on from there. But, I thought it was way too long. It was good to see Bohm kind of handle himself. He hit 14 in the second round, then he lost the swing off, but it was way too long. Bryce Harper makes the recommendation to go back to wearing the team uniforms in the All-Star game, and it looks like Rob Manfred might be listening to it.
I think that's a good idea. I look back at some of the old memories of some of the old All-Star games. In fact, I was just looking up 1989 because I was just thinking about how Mike Schmidt was announced along with the lineup because he had retired and was elected in or voted in by the fans, so they brought him out after the lineup was announced, but yeah, it was kind of neat seeing everybody in their own uniforms, and I actually like the hats too, being their actual team hats. I don't love the All-Star hats either. It'd be nice to just see them in their full uniforms. I think it's pretty cool that Bryce Harper made sure they got that picture in their full Phillies uniforms.
Well, like that, I said, look, if you're going to continue to make every team have a representative, then you got to put them in their uniforms. I don't know who Ryan McMahon is, and I don't know what team he plays for. So what am I benefiting if I'm a fan? I don't know who the guy is, and I don't know what team he plays for if he's not wearing his uniform. It does a disservice to the team and the player.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ryan McMahon is the third baseman for the Colorado Rockies.
Yes.
To everybody listening who does not know, but yeah, you're right. It'd be nice for casual fans around the league to know who these players are, who they play for, and then maybe that gives them something to watch. I mean, how many teams will face the Rockies and think, I really don't know anybody on that team? Because right now, honestly, they really don't even have that many vets that you might have any other than Charlie Blackmon, who's really a shell of his old self. But it'd be nice to say, oh, cool, Ryan McMahon's on that team. So really good point you make right there.
I like Greg's question as we get into the mailbag here. He says, forget the right-handed bat, forget the relief pitcher that everybody wants at the deadline. Can we count on Ranger Suarez to figure things out before he goes back to the guy that goes 7+ and gives us quality starts over and over again? The last 3 outings have been an ominous sign going forward. I think that's a good question. Can Ranger Suarez be the guy he was in the first half in the second half?
Ranger Suarez has been diagnosed with either tightness in his back or back spasms. I've heard both terms used. And let's not forget, Zach Wheeler was also dealing with the same thing. And I think when you have issues like that, what you need from that situation is just some simple rest. And as you said, Suarez did not take up that opportunity to pitch in the All-Star game. Neither did Wheeler. In fact, neither of them actually went. So they're taking the advantage of this time to rest their backs. And it looks like the Phillies are going to give them both next weekend as well. So when they set up the rotation coming out of the break in Pittsburgh, it looks like they're going to wait till the Minnesota series, which is the next series after the weekend, to pitch Suarez and Wheeler. So the hope is that if you give them that rest, not pitching every fifth day, they get this nice long week. In fact, Wheeler, of course, did not make his start on Sunday. Then that's a decent amount of rest. They're hoping they'll come out of it, a little bit stronger than they had shown. Both of them, really. Both of them didn't have their best stuff the last few outings. So, it's a long season. In fact, I remember a while ago, Mike, when the Phillies were probably at their peak winning percentage. You were talking about the over and under for wins, and some people were saying, oh, they'll win 105 now. And I said, well, no, maybe we got to look closer to like 95, because stuff like this happens in a long season. You get banged up a little bit, you get a little tired, your back starts to bother you. And so I think this is good that they get this break. They get next weekend off as well, and you want to hope that they will come back refreshed. Now, I will add, though, I would like to see some more starting pitching depth on this team. We have no date yet as to when Taijuan Walker is going to be coming back or progressing along. We very, very little information we've got about him, but it doesn't sound like they're going to rush him. So you need some starting pitching depth. We saw Sunday. Michael Mercado probably is not an answer in the rotation. Got a nice start out of Tyler Phillips. Is he going to keep that up? Or is he getting some first time around the league luck, as they used to call it? So I think they really need to add a starting pitcher at some point. I don't think they need to be an ace pitcher by any means, but I think you're going to need somebody there that can eat innings at the back end, just making sure that you don't let the bullpen overwork. Because usually when your starting pitching fails, then your bullpen's going to get overworked, and then the whole thing kind of comes apart.
Well, let's keep in mind, too, Michael Mercado had one good start, and we were like, wow, look at this guy. And then this last two outings have been 3 home runs against Oakland, 3 home runs against the Braves. So it looks like don't get too excited about Tyler Phillips, but we'll see. I would imagine he's going to get another start after the All-Star break here.
Yeah, I would bet he starts in Pittsburgh. We'll have to see how they pitch them at the All-Star game, but, Nola, Sanchez and Phillips in some order, depending on how the game goes, I would expect to see this weekend in Pittsburgh.
Yep. And then, of course, one of the things, too, that a lot of people, you look at Suarez. Sanchez is another guy. Can he keep up what he did in the first half, in the second half? I mean, he was an all-star. He just got added to the all-star team, but he pitched outstanding. You got a lot of guys. Matt Strahm has pitched way better than he's ever pitched before. Jeff Hoffman has pitched way better than he ever had before. There's a lot of things contributing to the Phillies having the best record in baseball, but you have to ask yourself, can those guys do it again over a long season? That really separates good players from like all-star players, because guys make the all-star game because they had good one half of the season, but the really elite players are able to do it over both halves of the season.
Very, very true, and I think we should give a lot of credit to Caleb Cotham and Brian Kaplan, who are really the architect of this pitching staff, and they've done a really good job getting the most out of these players. And I think we can't overlook their coaching process. Cotham is more the hands-on type, Kaplan more the philosophical end, but they've done a heck of a job with these Phillies pitchers getting the most out of them.
All right, Frank Klose's Phillies Mailbag is up at 97.3ESPN.com. Let's get into question number 2. It has to do with the Derby last night. Zach wants to know, now watching Bohm in the Derby, does that open up Bohm's power swing? Should we expect more homers from Bohm? We know it's in there. Everybody has speculated over the last couple of years, Frank, like this guy can hit 25, 30 home runs. He's not really shown us that in live games. He's more of a 22 home run guy. He's more of a doubles guy. But can he be a guy, or should he? Would you want to see him be a guy that hits more homers?
I do not think he needs to change anything. It's kind of funny. I said to my friends, one of my good friends is a big Alec Bohm fan, and going in, I was like, he's going to hit a bunch of line drives to the gap, and really that's what he did. Now, he was really good. He got a lot of them over the wall, but when you talk about quote unquote power, a lot of that is what they can slug. If you look at his slugging percentage, it's .482, which is very, very good. And that is those 33 doubles he has, that one triple he has, right? So he's kind of showing power, but it's not in the home run sense. And what I really liked about yesterday was Bohm didn't really change who he was in his swing. Yeah, he was looking to hit home runs because that's the whole point of yesterday. But I still saw that line drive gap hitter at the plate there. And I think that's really important. You mentioned Bobby Abreu a little while ago. When you think back to 2005, I remember you mentioned Comerica Park. I thought that short porch in right field, he was primed to win that. But then afterwards, if you look at his numbers from before to after that home run derby, Abreu hit .307 before the derby. He hit .260 after the derby. He had 18 home runs before the derby and only 6 after the derby. So some guys, if you look throughout, derby to derby, there's a lot of players that it really messes with their swing. And, Abreu is kind of seen as one of the obvious ones in Phillies history that it might have messed with his swing, so to speak. I think Bohm is going to be the player he was coming out of this as he was going in. And I think that's really what this team can use. I mean, he's driving the ball. He's driving in runs. I don't think you can worry about the ball going over the fence when he's giving you that much production.
Yeah, I know that, as you just mentioned with Bobby Abreu, some people always worry, if you enter the derbies, they're going to mess with your swing. Bohm is certainly a guy you hope that he doesn't get his swing messed up. He's got a great gap to gap. I think one of the reasons why, though, he's been such a great hitter is his approach is just his approach is one of, I don't need to hit a home run. I can hit a double, whereas so many guys want to hit for power. They want to hit those home runs, and they end up striking out.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. If you think back to the mid-2000s, you had Abreu win the one year, Howard won the next year, and then Chase Utley tried the year after that, and Utley just was not hitting home runs. He just went up there and was Chase Utley, which was not that type of hitter. So I think if you try to be something you're not, that really indeed can mess with your game. So I like Alec Bohm the way he is. I think he serves the Phillies very, very well the way he is. And I was glad to see that he didn't seem to change up too much going into that home run derby.
If you have a question for Frank, you can text it in at 609-403-0973 to our text board. We'll try to fit in a couple of more text messages at the All-Star break, 609-403-0973. But I think this one is an interesting question. Do you think there's a player or package that the Phillies could acquire? Rooker, Mason, they've mentioned some names that obviously I want to get your thoughts on those two who were just in Philadelphia. But it would include players like Sanchez or Painter or, say, a Rojas. Would the Phillies do it? We talked about this earlier. Is there players on the big league roster? I know Painter is not. Other than, is there anybody on the big league roster that they could use in a trade to upgrade the team with a player like a Rooker or a Mason Miller? In other words, is there a trade to be made that wouldn't include their top-end prospects?
Yeah, I don't think anybody is coming off the major league roster, at least in terms of the core pieces. Now, might a Christian Pache go back to somebody who just needs to stuff somebody in left field and man the position? Maybe. But in terms of really the core players on this team, I really don't see anything where the Phillies trade somebody off the major league roster. Certainly not Christopher Sanchez. I don't think they see him as a prospect at this point.
He just signed a big deal, too, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. He signed a deal to be in Philadelphia. I think he's going to stay put, and I think they're going to look to trade not even their top prospects either. So then I guess you ask the question, like, okay, well, if they're not going to trade the top prospects, they're not going to trade somebody off the major league roster, well, who then? Well, if you look lately the last few years, you've gotten a lot of value in trades from the people that might be your number 4 to 5 on in terms of their prospect lists. Teams are valuing their top prospects with a very high price tag. And, the super premium players that might be traded, they do want those players back. Now, I don't think the Phillies are shopping for any of those superstar type players that might be moved. I mean, there's really not that many that might be moved. You hear Jazz Chisholm a lot, for example. I don't think that the Phillies are interested from everything I've read. The big thing being he's a left-handed hitter, and the Phillies are looking for a right-handed hitter. But I think the Phillies are going to be shopping for those types of right-handed bats that fill the need the Phillies have, which is really just to play better against lefties. And to do so, I think you can find a nice outfield platoon bat that you can play in left field that will get some good at bats against left-handed pitching. You'll want Rojas to be around to platoon with Brandon Marsh in center if that's what happens. So I think when you look at the needs the Phillies have, you can probably fill those without giving up your Andrew Painters, without giving up Aiden Miller, without giving up maybe even Justin Crawford. He's not somebody that I would consider untouchable personally, but I don't think you need to give him up. You look at the likes of Mick Abel. Might they trade him? Maybe, but his value is kind of down right now, I would say, based upon his performance at AAA. So I don't think the Phillies need to shop in that aisle that will cost them their top prospects to do what they need, which is really supplement what they have, which is very good. Again, maybe an extra starter, definitely a right-handed bat for the outfield, but picking up a platoon bat per se might not be that expensive.
Here was what Jim Duquette, former GM, said on our show yesterday. Let me get your thoughts on his reaction here. Let me get your thought on his reacting to what he said here yesterday.
I think corner outfield, right? Like, all right, I'll give you a name that has popped up recently, like a Mark Canha with Detroit, right? Not an overall sexy name, but he would fit perfectly there. He has a great idea of the strike zone. Can play multiple outfield positions. He could play left. Outside, he could play a little bit of center field. He could also play right if you needed him to. The right-handed bat, but he hits righties. Like that type of guy. He's one guy that I think would be a really good fit and wouldn't be surprised if they're in on.
All right, former MLB GM Jim Duquette from MLB Network Radio. Mark Canha, I don't know that that's going to excite a lot of people listening.
I like Mark Canha. One thing I would note is he kind of has a little bit of a wrist issue right now that they're taking some time off from him playing to look at. But yeah, I think that's the right type of profile. In fact, when the Phillies lost Schwarber and Harper on the same day, I thought he was somebody that might have been good to, if you could get him in the immediate, because he could play first base, he could play some left field. So if he's healthy in a couple weeks and they're satisfied with that, I mean, he might be a nice pickup. Now, I know a lot of the buzz, Phillies fans sure saw Rooker over the weekend, but Brent Rooker. That was a name that came up kind of when he was still kind of anonymous out there, but after the weekend he had, I'm sure he's only increasing his value in a trade. But someone like Rooker, kind of a starting designated hitter, I kind of worry about his defense. If you shove him in left field, it could be like shoving Kyle Schwarber in left field. As we said with Rhys Hoskins last year, you really only got room for one of those, all bat, no glove types. And so I would be a little cautious. I think if you are confident that he can not totally butcher left field, maybe you consider a Rooker. But I think the Canha type is the type that the Phillies will be looking for. Hits lefties well, can play some left field. Another position's nice. And I just don't know that they need to break the bank for a player like that. But Canha is a really good idea.
Well, let me get your thoughts on that, because last year they got a guy like Michael Lorenzen, who was an all-star, and he threw a no-hitter, and he didn't help them at all. I mean, he did not appear in a playoff game, to my memory. He may have thrown I don't even know if he was on the roster for the wild card. Did they learn their lesson from that, though? Like, hey, we can't just get a bit player or a part-time player. If we're going to make a move to help us win a World Series, it's going to have to be someone who's legitimately going to help us.
Yeah, I think the Phillies' need is so specific. When you look at Dave Dombrowski's history, finding the platoon player that's going to hit well against lefties or righties, that has served him well in the past. A little bit different than the pitching situation. The last couple of years, he added a starter. Both times, they didn't really think. In fact, even last year, Lorenzen, the thought was that by the end of the year, he would be in the bullpen. I mean, I think for this offensive position, I think this is a situation where if you get the right bat that can hit lefties well, it can be a platoon type, and you won't really feel that loss. Brandon Marsh, unfortunately, does not hit left-handed pitching. And of course, other players, when you have Marsh and Rojas in the lineup, or if you had Pache and Rojas in the lineup against lefties, they're still not getting much production. So they really need something. Now, getting JT Realmuto back soon, which I believe is still on track for this weekend in Pittsburgh. That will help the Phillies a lot. But they really need an extra right-handed bat because lately they've just had Nick Castellanos to hit a left-handed pitcher, and that's been a problem. So I think a platoon bat like a Canna does solve that problem.
Well, we'll see. Obviously, they're going to be in talks with a lot of teams, and we'll see if they go big game hunting, bit player, or something else here. And, of course, we'll have it in the mailbag here. Here's an interesting question that came in from the mailbag. Dan in EHT says, are the Phillies built more for the regular season or a postseason run?
I think the playoffs, for sure. Because, as we saw in 2022, your best half of your roster is what's going to get you to the World Series, right? But I do caution against taking for granted like a fifth spot in the rotation because you can't burn those innings. One of the reasons the Phillies bullpen is so darn good this year is they haven't had to fill a lot of innings. Last couple of days they had to fill a bunch of innings. I think it was evident in how some of the pitchers performed. Just having Seranthony out there for way too long because they had to throw a lot of innings on Sunday. Well, you saw what you got out of it, right? So. But I think for the most part, the Dave Dombrowski thinks with the playoffs in mind. When I get to the postseason, what's going to win? And really, it's those top three pitchers usually is what leads the way, and the offense. And the Phillies have built their offense with a lot of big name money, and they have now 4 starters that you feel pretty good about going into the playoffs, which is not something they had the last couple of years.
Yeah, you could maybe say both. They're built for both this year. I mean, they're going to win possibly 100 games. But they're also built for the playoffs with 4 all-star caliber starting pitchers in the top end of their lineup with, 1, 2, 3 starters in the all-star game. They might be built for both for this particular season. Much different than the Braves and the Dodgers, who have very deep lineups that can score a bunch of runs on Tuesday night against bad pitching staff. Their problem is the depth of their pitching staff not playoff worthy.
Yeah, the Dodgers, the Phillies caught them when they had some arms down, but like Glasnow had an injury history. Clayton Kershaw, they signed him really not knowing what they would get out of him. So, and of course, Yamamoto, the free agent signing, hasn't pitched in the United States yet. I mean, the Dodgers rolled the dice, so you knew they were going to expose themselves at certain times, and you kind of saw in the Philly series, that could be their heel. I mean, certainly being without Buehler is a big deal if you're the Dodgers. So, it's really hard to find pitching and keep it healthy. And that's part of the reason I give the Phillies such kudos, because that pitching management that they have between Kaplan and Cotham, these Phillies pitchers have been mostly healthy. And they had the Walker injury and these little minor things a couple times, but keeping your staff healthy is really, really important.
All right, Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com. The Phillies will start this weekend in Pittsburgh at PNC Park. Aaron Nola will start for the Phils. No other pitchers have been announced yet for either teams. We'll see if we say Paul Skeens. Do you think he'll pitch this weekend against the Phillies?
Well, he's starting the game tonight, so that might have him back by Sunday, I think. So you might have a shot to see him on Sunday.
All right, we'll keep our eyes out for that. Skeens tonight in the All-Star Game, and you can listen to the All-Star Game right here on 97.3 ESPN and get Frank's mailbag next Tuesday right here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, Frank Klose, everybody, from 97.3 ESPN.com here on the Sports Bash.